Here with Shane McAnally at Smack Songs.
There it is.
Your publishing company.
Yes.
It's amazing. It's great to be sitting down with you. I'm a huge fan of your work.
Thank you.
Seriously, really am. Just not saying that because we're on recording, but I love it. Pretty much everything you do. I'm like, that little bugger just writes the freaking amazing songs ever. So
thank you very much.
I want to talk about that, but let's go all the way back. I want to hear about your journey. What was the first dollar that you made in the music business?
That's a good question. One I have never been asked, actually. People always ask, where was the first place you sang? The first time I made money, I used to, when I was 13, there's a circuit in Texas, where I'm from, Texas, Oklahoma, even some in Arkansas, that was a circuit of Opries, that a lot of people have come through this circuit in this region. Leanne Womack, Steve Holy, myself, Leanne Rimes, Maren Morris, Kacey Musgraves, Miranda Lambert, and I didn't know all of them at the time. We're all different ages. I did do this around the same time as Leanne Rimes. We did a lot of stuff together. But there was a show called the Johnny High Country Music Review that all of those people I just named played on. And it was in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It moved around some. But they paid $30 for you to sing on Saturday night. And I remember that was such a big deal. I can remember the way the check looked. Wow. With the little plastic window that you could see your name through. Okay. So I would say that was the first time I actually got paid to play music. I was singing and doing some stuff before that locally in my hometown of Mineral Wells, Texas. I would play this thing called the Crazy Water Festival and just play at any grand opening of any store. But I think the first time I ever got paid was the Johnny High Country Music Review, and I was probably 13.
So 13 years old. You've been in it for pretty much your whole life.
Yes.
Were you singing your own songs? Were you doing
guess
covers,
when you think I'm 43, so this is my 30th anniversary.
Hey, that's pretty good, man.
We should celebrate. No, my whole life. I was writing songs even before that, but not really knowing what that meant or what to do with it. You know.
So it turned into something. What was the journey between that and obviously you came? It sounded like you moved to Nashville as an artist. Right? Was that kind of the thing that brought you here?
Yeah. I first came to Nashville as just a tourist when I was in third grade, which would have been, how old are you in third grade? 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Maybe 10.
Sounds about right.
So I was already obsessed with music. That's what I asked my parents for a trip. I wanted to come to Nashville, and Opryland was here then, and the main thing that brought me here was that there was a museum here that was Barbara Mandrell country. And Barbara Mandrell was, to me, like the greatest thing there ever was. She had a TV show, and her sisters played all these instruments. And I was just fascinated with them and just the entertainment part of it. And so I came on a vacation. That was in the third grade, went back to Texas, and then in the next couple of years that followed, started to sing anywhere, like I said before, anywhere they'd let me, and eventually came back to Nashville again when I was 19. After a year at the University of Texas in Austin, I just came up with some fraternity brothers that I was going to go to the Bluebird, and that was the goal. A movie had come out around that time called Crazy Little Thing Called Love that was about Nashville. And Sandra Bullock was in it. Most people don't know this movie. But it was about the process of going to the Bluebird and getting up and playing your songs. And we all had watched that movie and decided we were going to drive up here together, and I was going to go to the Bluebird, and that's exactly what I did.
So were you going to try to do open mic or what?
Yep, yeah. That's right. I had written some songs and I would play them at fraternity parties and just for my friends, and so we went up there. We didn't know that not everybody got to play. So we got there and put my name in a hat, and luckily it was drawn. So it was the first time I'd ever played in front of people songs that I had written.
Wow.
I'd played in bands and done a lot of stuff, but I hadn't sat in front of an audience and played an original.
Was that the big break or whatever? Was there somebody in the audience? Yeah, well, it certainly
wasn't a break, but it was a break in, I would say, an opening in my soul saying, this is where you need to be. I was among songwriters in the room. I had never been with people that were doing the same thing as me. And the reaction of those people coming up to me saying, oh, that was a good song. It was like, I've got to just be doing this all the time. There was no reason at that point for me to go back to school. And although I did go back to finish out the year, my sights were just set on finishing and getting to Nashville. And I left as soon as that first year of college was over and moved.
So take us through, okay, after that year, you moved back to Nashville. What was the path? Like, what did you do?
Yeah, well, I moved here, again, I was 19. I found my grandmother brought me and drove me and my cousin up here. My cousin was just looking for a new life, basically, and he was just coming with me. And so he didn't stay long, but I got a job at a restaurant. I had no plan. Somebody through somebody knew one person at Curb Publishing, and she was a friend of. It was literally through 5 people. And I would just follow up this call and finally got to go and play some songs for her. And that part of my story happened very fast. I was offered a publishing deal within 6 months of being here, which was at Curb. It was sort of connected to a record deal. Sure. I wasn't around much in the writing circles. I didn't know a lot. And I just had a connection with this woman at the publishing company and really just set out to, I guess, make a record was my thought, but I was really just so happy to be being paid. And I still had my restaurant job because, the publishing draw wasn't a lot, but I felt like it was, I had made it. Within 6 months, I wasn't even 20 years old. I had a record deal, I had a publishing deal. And then what happened was the reality of the music business set in, which is what a lot of people miss still, is it isn't about getting a publishing deal or a record deal. That is just literally one of so many steps. And mine just happened in an odd order because I still had to learn to write the right kind of songs and really figure out who I was as an artist, which I didn't do even in making my record for Curb. It took years before I started to have a true voice as a songwriter and an artist that ultimately led to me writing for other people.
Years of you writing for yourself, doing records. What was the process between that, you get to first deal, and then actually being able to go full time at this? Or was that the moment?
No, it wasn't. I mean, I think I was really I wasn't playing live. I was just writing and trying to finish a record. And that honestly took 4 years before I had a single, 4 or 5, which was an eternity because, every song I wrote, I felt like was the single. I was in the place where every song was the one.
So 4 or 5 years of were they just getting shot down, or what was the creative process?
And it was just, looking back, the reality was I just wasn't ready. And I still wasn't ready even when the things did come out. But I just think that there's a naivety that comes with something happening so fast. The fact that I got a record deal so fast, it gave me a false sense of being good. I mean, I think I thought I knew more than I did. And I had no life experience. I mean, I didn't have anything to write about. And I was just chasing what was on the radio. So ultimately, that deal went away. And in being sort of disillusioned after about 7 years, I was really disappointed. Nothing had worked. The singles hadn't worked. And I had another developmental deal on RCA, and that fell through. And so I left Nashville. And it wasn't that I was running from the music business because all I knew how to do was music, but I felt like Nashville didn't get what I was doing, and I was going to blame anybody close. And so I went to LA, and I spent another 7+ years doing a similar thing there.
Like a pop thing?
Well, meaning similarly spinning my wheels, just writing songs. And yeah, pop, I mean, but everyone there thought I was country, but what I was doing there wouldn't have been considered country in Nashville. Sure. It was just that, in LA, I stuck out. I talked country. Yeah. My references were all country. And, but really that was the true finding of a voice, the metaphorical voice of, sure. Telling stories about my life and about my relationships. And that was what LA brought. I was no longer chasing the radio, nor was I trying to keep up with co-writers or what someone else wanted to say, because I didn't know anybody in LA. I didn't have any co-writers. I was writing everything by myself and playing acoustic shows at, the Viper Room, the Cat Club, Hotel Cafe. And I had a pretty good following, but nothing happened. It was one of these really weird things where I would play every few weeks and like 300 people would show up.
Wow.
But it never changed. It's like it started there and it stayed there. And there was just never that person that walks in and changes your life, that just never happened. And I would have meetings and meet with different people, but there was just never a great deal of excitement. And like I said, that went on for about 7 years. And then in a writing trip back to Nashville, I wrote a song with Aaron Enderlin called Last Call. And that song instantly was getting attention from labels. And Leanne Womack recorded it really quick. And I was so at the end of my rope at that point.
Because that was like 12 years in of
that song, I had moved to Nashville in 94. That song was recorded in 2008. So it was 14 years. And then I didn't have a number one until 2010.
Wow.
So it was just what it took for me. But what happened with Last Call and the Leanne Womack cut was really, I was following any sign. And the fact that she recorded a song of mine was enough to say I'm going back to Nashville.
So that was because it was like the country thing is where I'm meant to be?
I just needed something. Yeah. I was just following the light. Wow. It was like, okay, maybe they want me there now and this is what I'll do. I just wanted to make a living doing music so bad. I was so far past worrying about how I was going to be an artist or, I was just, where do I fit? Can I do anything in music? Because I had spent all the years that other people get work experience in college. I had spent doing music. Yeah. So it was like, I've got to find a job in this business.
Sure.
And at that point, I'm mid-30s and thinking, how will I ever have a family or do anything else if this doesn't pan out?
Yeah. So I guess the Leanne Womack cut was would you say that's a turning point?
Absolutely.
And was it, a lot of people have this impression that you get that cut and then the doors just fling wide open?
Well, I think that I would say for most people that is not what happens. I would say that is what happened for me. And I don't know if it's because it had taken so long before. Retroactively, sure. I was being, the universe had saved up. That it was a very unusual thing that happened for me after that, because a lot of times you'll see someone get a cut and then it takes a minute and then maybe 5 years later something else happens. It just started to happen so fast. And then within about 18 months of Last Call being on the radio, Kenny Chesney recorded Somewhere With You. And that felt like the doors just blew off. Yeah. It was at that point, I could never have imagined what was going to happen. That was my first number one in 2010. And we're in 2018, and I think we just celebrated my 35th.
Holy cow, man.
And so...
Dude, congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, I know the stammering... I know how unusual, and I'm very grateful. Yeah. It's an unusual story, and I appreciate that about it. But I do remind people when they say, well, yeah, I mean, look what happened for you. There was a lot of years where nothing was happening.
Yeah. Well, that's really, it's really encouraging because, what we see from the outside, and even me being in the industry and not really knowing a lot of your story, I'd have never known that. You had the 5 years here, you had the 7 years in LA. Most people would give up at year one or two.
Well, and it also helps that I look, 25. So
you got the
people are like, how did this happen?
Got the genes, man. That's so awesome. So full-time in it, obviously. Can you talk about nowadays, I think it was the beginning of last year, you teamed up with Jason Owen to relaunch Monument Records with Sony. Mm-hmm. What are all the pieces of what you do now? Because you've got, obviously, you as a writer, producer. Would you still consider that the main thing?
I'm always a writer first.
Yeah.
That's just the thing that's brought me to the party. I was writing songs before I knew, when we talked about my history, the truth is I was writing songs at 7, at 8 years old. It is my destiny to write songs. That was what God made me for. And so the other things that have come from that are out of, I am an ambitious person.
Sure.
And there's only so far and so much that writing can do for me when I want to take it and do other things. Yeah. But it always comes back to the heart of what I do is songwriting. But as far as all the arms of what I do now, what happened was I didn't have a publishing deal when my song started to get recorded. And I had a friend named Robin Palmer who I had known since the 90s when I was an artist. She used to pitch me songs. She had worked in the business for a long time. She got a comp of mine when I came back to Nashville.
Sure.
And she was pitching my songs, but just on a handshake deal. She was affiliated with a publishing company at the time, but nobody in the building besides her was interested in me as a writer, so I couldn't get a deal there. I would have taken, honestly, anything.
Yeah. And this was even after the Leanne.
This was after the Leanne, yeah.
Back up for 2 seconds, how did that happen? Like, was that...
Because my co-writer, Erin Enderlin, had a deal. Okay. She was a writer at Universal Music. So they were able to get the song to Leanne Womack. And
so Universal pitched it?
Yes, exactly. And in the process of all that is when I reacquainted myself with Robin Palmer, gave her some songs, and she became especially attached to Somewhere With You and said, I just think this song could change everything for you. That song actually sounded like a lot of my songs. And so I think her thought was, if we can get this recorded, then there's so many here, In
that moment, are you kind of like, because people, tend to latch onto the one thing, and you're like, okay, like, what's your,
I think I was just happy somebody was out there throwing the song around. And she pitched it 11 times. I mean, literally pitched it every way possible to Kenny Chesney. And
can you explain that? Dive into that.
There's label. There's A&R, there's producer Buddy Cannon, there's management Clinton Hyam, who's a dear friend of mine.
So she sends it to every single one.
And goes in different situations. Ultimately, what happened was, this is so bizarre. She had pitched it all these different ways, and it had just never. It wasn't that people were passing on it. It was just that everybody was like, "Yeah, this is cool. We'll see what he thinks," and that just kind of leaves it in a gray area. And she then had a meeting with Kenny and Buddy Cannon after all of these pitches, and it was a group, these women that are still pitching songs and getting songs recorded called the Chicks with Hits. And Robin was a member of this group, and they were having a pitch meeting with Kenny and his producer Buddy Cannon, and they all got to leave on CD in a basket one song. Robin's torn because her thought is, do I leave this song that they've heard 10 different ways? Or do I leave something else? She decided to leave the song again and try again. And that 11th pitch was the charm. And they put it on hold. They said they were going to cut it. There's still so many things that have to happen.
Even after,
And eventually, it became the single, and that really did. It just felt like I said, the doors got blown off. It was like Kenny had anointed me, like with that sound and the phrasing. It was an unusual phrasing that JT Harding and I wrote the song, and it was rapid fire and just something.
Is that you? Is that because I hear that in a lot of your stuff, that the phrasing is so unique.
It is. Everybody always says that, like the shotgun lyric. It is me, but in Somewhere With You, that was JT's lead. I mean, he's the one who went and did that chorus that way. A lot of times what happens, especially for some reason with him and I, is that you sort of take on the qualities of your co-writer.
Yeah. That's
and
good way to say it.
So often people will say, "Oh, I know that line was you in a song." And I'll be like, no, actually, that was Josh Osborne. Because we do sort of take on each other's roles. Because what's happening is you want to impress the other person. So you throw out something you think they would like. And so JT went for that shotgun lyric thing because he knew I loved that. And he just did it in a way that was so unique. I was like, oh my God, did we record that? I just thought it was the greatest thing I'd ever heard. But anyway, amazing. That's sort of... I don't even know where we started here.
No. That's great. I think went off on a rabbit trail about radio, and then how do you? So let's talk about you in the writing room. That's
okay.
What's your process like with that?
I really go.
Do you do tracks? Do you top line?
I don't do tracks. Okay. I am in awe of people that know how to do that. I'm not technical. I'm completely instinctual. Instead of using a lot of technical terms, I use like crunchy or shiny, or that's like a joke among my friends.
That makes sense, though.
Yeah.
At least those words make sense.
Descriptive, visual words for me. And I don't want to get bored in a song. And that is something that I think I have a strong instinct about in the room, is saying, we get to this section and my brain turns off. I don't care. Like, let's change it.
Fix it, yeah.
And I won't, I think one of my gifts is that I'm very decisive, and I think that being able to stop in the process and not just use something because we wrote it.
Yeah.
I'm like that as a producer as well. It doesn't matter to me if we've gone down a road and recorded something. If it doesn't feel right, I don't chalk that up to wasted time. Yeah. It was a hall we had to go down. Yeah. And so that happens a lot in the writing room, where I'm like, that entire verse is wrong and we need to start over there.
So how long does obviously this is probably all over the spectrum, but how long does a typical write last for
These days, the typical write is 4 or 5 hours.
And you're done by the end of it usually with something?
Usually, yeah. And that's also depends on who you're writing with. There are exceptions. Sam Hunt is a big exception to that. We don't write the same way we do not write together the same way that other people write. He is a thinker, someone that you can write an entire song and know that you're probably going to get a call tomorrow saying, this entire section belongs in a different song and I want to rewrite this. Body Like a Back Road, I recently found the original lyric that we had written. It looks nothing like the song does now. And I would say it took us, from the time he threw that title out to the time it was really finished, because lines changed up to the last night that it was put out. Yeah. It was about 9 months.
Wow.
But that's very unusual.
Yeah. And you're not working every day for 9 months. He's on the road and
right. Not 9 months on that song every day. No, we're all doing different things. But it was, we got together pretty regularly on it, knowing that's what we were going to be working on. So I would say actual hours in the room, there were 10 solid days of working on that song.
Yeah. So that would be the exception, not the rule.
Absolutely. And because most of us don't have the attention, we lose focus on things. And we also, I can't, read his mind.
Right.
And so a lot of times he just has to have something outlined. It's nice to finish sections and parts of a song and then let him go live with it.
Yeah.
And just have things in place, because his instinct is, I know this line isn't right, but it's holding the place of where something's going to go. So it's not just humming, and I think I have a tendency to do that also. I do that with other writers. It's just a faster process because I'm not always trying to figure out what the artist wants to say. Yeah. A lot of times we're writing for an unknown. Yeah. Like, who are we going to pitch this to? I don't know. Let's just get the song right and then see.
Yeah. So who all is on your team now? Obviously, have your label, you have Smack Songs.
Yeah.
Is there another thing that I'm missing, or is that?
So we have Smack Songs Publishing, which we have 15 writers, myself included, and from the original team of people that I used to work with, a tribe. We called ourselves the hit shitters, and we were not shitting any hits. Trust me, that was definitely a joke, but it was Brandy Clark, Matthew Ramsey of Old Dominion, Trevor Rosen of Old Dominion, Matt Jenkins, myself, and Josh Osborne.
And you were just people that were collaborating regularly.
A lot. Yeah. And we did retreats together, and we were we really were the little engine that could. And we were kind of just lifting each other up and championing each other. And now at Smack Songs, of that original crew, 4 of us right here at Smack. Trevor and Matthew from Old Dominion, Josh Osborne, who is currently the biggest songwriter in Nashville. He has 9 singles on the chart right now.
Wow.
And myself. So it's really cool to have that history with those folks.
Yeah.
And then, so in addition to that, we have Smack Management. My husband actually manages Walker Hayes with Smack Management.
Love his stuff, man.
And Kylie Morgan, who is a new artist here in town. She's fantastic and 23 and just blows my mind. And so we have the management side of things, the publishing side of things. We have a production company, which I produce Walker Hayes, Old Dominion, Midland, Sam, and a lot of these are co-production ventures.
Sure.
Kacey Musgraves produced her first 2 records and some other specialty projects, and then am currently working on a project with Little Big Town. And so the production side of things has become its own arm, because there is a lot more involved in that than just deciding. What it used to be was that I was friends with Kacey. We did demos together, and so we went in with Luke Laird and we ended up making records. Yeah. That's how it started. But ultimately, when you're juggling that many artists, and there's a lot of new artists that I didn't list, when you're trying to produce
side that you guys
the production side.
On the production side.
And in Smack in general, I call it more of a developmental, company, mental for sure. Being that I love the process of finding it with artists. And so a lot of times we're interim managers, where folks that don't have management, we work with them until it's time for them to go and do that next step. Some things end up at Monument Records, which I'm an owner in, but we don't have room for everything that I'm doing. And there's also so many artists in different, our Monument is not just country. So there are some pop acts and things like that. So with Monument, with the management side, with the production side, I've written a musical that is the theatrical side of Smack, I guess. That I've been working on it with Brandy Clark for about 5 years.
That's awesome. I had no idea.
Yeah, and it actually had its debut in Dallas. It's something that they do out of town runs, sort of reworking. It's with Fox Theatrics in New York, and we have an amazing Broadway team that has done every show you can imagine. And so that's something else that is really intriguing and really fun. And it's actually loosely based on the old Hee Haw show.
Oh, very cool.
Gaylord brought the idea to us about revamping that brand. And so, musicals actually take a really long time. That's something that's very different in our world, is that every time we would do something, it would take like 2 years to get a reading together, 2 more years to get it up in Dallas. Now we're in the next phase, which is figuring out how it translates to Broadway. So we're 5 years in, and nobody in New York seems that concerned that we're 5 years in. Everybody's like, oh yeah, you're about halfway there.
About normal.
So yeah, there's,
So how do you focus? Like, what's your, in all of that? I mean, the danger is when you get 35 number ones and all the success, you have all this opportunity.
Right.
How do you filter that?
I don't.
How do you make decisions?
That's actually that's the process I'm in now, is figuring out what I'm the most drawn to. That I have a really hard time saying no to things. I don't want to miss something. I've met so many artists through the years that I'm so drawn to, and I love writing with artists that have a story, that have a point of view. That's why I was drawn to Kacey. That's why Sam and I hit it off. They have a lane.
Yeah.
And, but I can't do it all. And that is really hard for me to take, because I have had to say no to some things that have been painful.
Yeah. So do you have a filter now, or is it kind of just you're
I have to say I rely on a lot of people around me to say what's the long term going to look like with this. If I get involved with this, what does it look like? Yeah, it's fun right now, and to make a commitment to someone and go, sure, I'll produce your record. And I have to rely on other people around me saying the reality of this is when it would fall, and this is what you have going on, and it won't work. So it's more about now creating a team of people around me that I really trust, and I have that, and it's amazing that I have been able to delegate a lot of that, so that I can focus on just creative thinking. Because I'm terrible at the organization part of it. I want to say yes to everything, and I'm completely scattered.
Totally. Well, let's jump through our last, we call them a full circle 5. So we'll just blaze through those. First one, what is your favorite book or record that you most commonly recommend to people?
Book is Steve Martin's book about his stand-up career. It's called Born Standing Up. And I don't know why I read it years ago, but I have definitely recommended that book to more people than it comes up all the time, especially talking to artists, because he did not want to be famous, but he was especially talented in the comedy world, and he knew he had a premonition of success, of celebrity, is what he says. And he always knew he was going to be famous, but it's interesting to me that he truly didn't want that. He just knew it was part of what would come with what he did. And just the way he handled it. And I'm also fascinated with the fact that if you've ever talked to anyone who's ever met Steve Martin, and I have not met him, nor do I intend to, because he says that he doesn't like to be approached because he doesn't know how to fake intimacy. He's not good at small talk, and he said he always disappoints people. And I just found that really honest and interesting. And anyone who had read that book would know if they saw him in an airport not to go up to him. You know what I mean?
You're just going to be let down.
It's just a cool book, though. It's just about, the other thing, sorry to keep talking about this. This is another thing I've told artists forever, is like when people are doing jobs that they think are no good, like, why am I working at Starbucks? Or why am I, and I'm supposed to be doing music. I did all of those jobs and felt the same way. And Steve Martin did too. And he talks about how every single job he ever had, like he used to work in this magic shop, and he later used magic in his show, and the only reason he ended up with those skills was because of that magic shop job. And I just found it fascinating. He said that everything came back in his work, from writing movies to writing stories. He was able to use all those characters from those jobs that he thought were useless. And I feel the same way now. I mean, so many characters that show up in my songs and in my writing are from people that I met in situations that I thought I was wasting my time.
That's amazing. Second question, failure can turn into an asset if it changes your perspective on something or changes your behavior. So in that sense, can you pinpoint a favorite failure moment?
I've had so many, Seth.
What's your favorite? Kind of a strange question.
I think the whole artist, the aspiration to be an artist, when I moved to Nashville and getting a record deal and it just not working. Like I always say, I had a script for everyone in Nashville. When I got here, they did not read from it. And I'm so glad I had that experience. And when I used to hear people say things like this, like, I'm so glad I didn't make it as an artist, that sounds like bullshit to me. But now experiencing what I learned during that time, especially my work with artists, I can say there is not a situation that you've been put in that I haven't been put in. And it didn't work for me. And I know what it feels like. And that's my favorite failure. It's a long series of failures, but it really is the artist part of it, because I work with so many people who think that every day is the end all. And if we go into a label and pitch something and it doesn't work, it really hurts. And I just remind them that it all worked for me. that part of it, getting a deal, but the other side didn't. So that doesn't guarantee anything.
Yeah.
You got to find the right team, and it's got to be the right time. So I guess that's the best failure.
Yeah, it's good. Good answer. Before you kind of dove fully in, so mentally rewinding a little bit before the full-time thing, was there a one thing that you could pinpoint that maybe held you back from jumping in? Or were you always just kind of all in on it?
Absolutely. It was being gay. I mean, I was closeted. I lived here, in my 20s. I was so afraid of anyone finding out I was gay that it completely hindered the way I wrote. It, when you're not being honest as who you are as a person, it's going to translate. I think the number one thing people see is inauthenticity. I mean, that is why artists do not work, because something is not reading as the truth. And so that really held me back in every aspect. And when I came out, everything changed, because I came back to Nashville in 2008, having lived in LA and lived an out life.
Sure.
Coming to Nashville and not sitting in a writing room and changing pronouns or being afraid that someone was going to ask me. I just came in with that. Like, I didn't say, hello, I'm gay. I just made sure pretty quick that people knew, because it made my writing more honest. So
there was never like an official whatever outmo. It's like it happened when you moved to LA, and then you just kind of brought it with you when you came back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I had been, I met my now husband right around the time I moved back to Nashville. And he was someone who just had never lived closeted, and he lived in Atlanta at the time. And he was somebody that really showed me that whether it be family, whether it be friends, whether it just be a job that seems unrelated to being gay, that just that secret or just keeping that from people, you weren't being your authentic self. And he was really the one who kind of just, when I came back to Nashville, was like, this is an opportunity for you. Not that people didn't know,
sure,
but it's like keeping it a secret or just the omission of eventually is going to catch up with you. Yeah. And so, that's sort of how it all happened.
So, and I guess for a lot of people too, not even maybe being from Nashville or being in this industry, like that obviously was probably, I could see why that,
I
was
lived
really
through in Nashville what happened with Ty Herndon.
Yeah.
I had a deal around the same time as him. He was having hits.
Yeah.
And I was trying to.
Yeah.
And seeing what happened to his career as a result of him being gay, that was a different time. But, that scares you. It pushed everybody further in the closet.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say everybody. I do not think there's a bunch of closeted artists,
sure,
and that's not what I mean.
Sure.
But anybody who might have been, not even just an artist, somebody who might have been on the other side of it, the business side, thinking if that's what they do to artists because they're gay, then I guess I'm going to have to be in the closet, you know? So coming back in 2008 was a big difference from 98. Yeah. Even that 10 years made a big difference.
Yeah. So honesty and authenticity.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's always just right at some point you make a decision to say, I don't really care if somebody thinks this or that.
No, but and the truth is it was only me who cared. That's what I found.
Yeah.
I've never been discriminated against. I'm not saying that no one has. I know a lot of people have. But since I moved back in 2008, I feel like it's been the opposite. I feel like I've just been so embraced. My family, we have children, everybody just champions us and supports us and gives us the old nudge like, I can't believe two guys are raising these children. That's it's actually been just a great experience, and it was all when I changed.
That's so good, man. So what is something that's working for you right now?
I mean, I definitely would think what comes to mind that's not working is my schedule. I am overwhelmed. There are a lot of individual things that are really working well. Whether it be artist careers that Old Dominion, I worked with them for a long time, and they are just hitting a stride like no other. It just feels like every song, everything is just falling right in place when they hit that moment. And as an extension, I feel like that's really working for me. But the thing that really overall that works for me the most is family. That's where I feel the most connected. My kids are I have 5-year-old twins, and that was clearly meant for me to spend some time and focus on, because that's the place where I feel the most at home. You know, I know that sounds like I'm at home, but it's also the place where I feel the most at home. So I don't really know how to answer that unless I got real specific about, songwriting's really working.
Sure.
And I have a lot of hits right now, and that's, wonderful. But the thing that feels the most like where I'm in my body, where I'm sitting there going, this is where I'm supposed to be, is when I'm with them.
That's good. It's a good answer. I can totally relate to that. I have 2 little girls myself.
You do?
It's nothing better.
No, and it just seems like it's just going to add chaos, and it does.
Yeah.
But there's something else that it grounds you and gives you a real sense of purpose.
Yeah. So last of the Full Circle 5, if you woke up tomorrow morning, hypothetically, and all of this stuff, whatever, this empire just kind of collapsed, and you had to start from square one, but you still have all the knowledge, you got the experience, you got the relationships, you had to start from square one, doing absolutely anything, where would you start?
It would be to write a song. I mean, that is the thing that fixes me most days. And I don't get to write every day now, but I still, most weeks, write 3 songs.
Yeah.
And no matter what my mood is, no matter what I feel like the world is ending with something, in that bubble, it's like meditative for me. It's therapeutic. It fixes me. And that is what I would do. I would write a song, because it is ultimately the thing I know how to do best, and it's the most natural to me. So I would write a song about what happened, I guess.
That's so good. So is there anything that you're working on right now that you're particularly excited about, you love to talk about?
There's so many great things. At Monument, we have signed a kid named Brandon Ratcliffe, who is up next, and he is just fantastic. He's a prolific songwriter, incredible entertainer. He's Justin Timberlake and John Mayer somehow in a country voice. I'm just blown away. He's 23. I don't know how people at that age know themselves the way these kids do. I keep looking for the fake. Like, how do you know this? How can you feel that already? I just think that people have grown up in a different way. Because of social media, because we've kind of put this adult presence on kids where they just learn faster. I just felt like at 23, I was still so green. I didn't know anything about anything. I mean, I was still with girls. I didn't even know there was a whole world of I don't believe being gay is a choice. That's not what I'm saying. But the option of that seems so far from possibility that I just closed that off. And so I just think that these kids have just had it, good and bad. They've been given a lot of information. So their life experience is far beyond their years. But Brandon is just an incredible talent. I could list you so many, but I'm especially excited about him right now.
It's awesome. I'll have to check him out. So how can people interact with you? Obviously socials, all of that stuff.
I guess that, socials. I mean, I'm pretty into Instagramming, mostly because of my kids. That's given me a great outlet for that. Yeah.
It's awesome. So, man, thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. Know you're a busy man running many, many things.
Thank you for
having me. It's an honor. So
I really appreciate it.